everybody. My name is Lisa Owens, and I'm delighted to be here to welcome all of you into this celebration of Mary Boone and her new book, Bugs for Breakfast: How Eating Insects Could Help Save the Planet. I had to read the subtitle. But it's such a wonderful book, and Mary's so excited to feature this today and talk a little bit about it. We'll have uh, time for her to give a brief talk about the book, and we'll do, uh, um, pardon me, excuse me, we just started and I'm a little bit behind already. But Mary's going to talk about the book. We're going to have a little conversation about it. She's got some fun activities planned with tasting some of the bug foods that are included in her book. And I'd like for you to have any questions that you have for Mary along the way about the writing, about the book, about her writing career, anything you want to ask, put those in the Q&A. And instead of the chat, keep chatting throughout the presentation to cheer her on and, talk amongst yourselves. And I'm sure she'll like to save that for later. But put your questions specifically in the Q&A function. And later on in the program, we're going to have a giveaway for that people will draw from people who entered questions in the Q&A function, and we'll try to get to all your questions. I'd like to formally introduce Mary. She's Mary Boone. She's right there. And I've known her for several years. And the first time we met, she was talking about this book at a workshop we were having for our local SCBWI chapter. And she was working very hard on it then. And I know it's been a long journey and a wonderful one because the book just turned out beautifully. And Mary's also the author of 60 plus other books for children. And she writes biography, natural science, all kinds of wonderful books for children. And this has just been a labor of love, I believe, to get this book launched. And Mary, I'd like you to take it away.
Awesome. Thank you to Lisa for hosting and emceeing us today. Lisa is a fellow Iowan, so I think the first time we met, Iowans just gravitate toward Iowans. And she's right. I have been talking about this book forever. And I don't think that that's overstating it. I knew a little bit about people eating insects, just a little bit about it, but it seemed like a really far off and far away topic to me for a long time. It really wasn't until about 8 years ago when my daughter Eve and I went on an exchange trip, a cultural exchange trip to Vietnam and Cambodia, that on that trip, as we got ready to go, we said, we're going to try new and different things. And for those who know Eve, it should not be surprising that Eve tried cauliflower for her first time, and that was her new and exciting thing. I decided I would be a little more daring. So we went into a busy market in Ho Chi Minh City. I don't know if any of you have ever been to Vietnam. The markets are amazing, and you see people selling fish out of fresh, tanks. They're still swimming, and you pick your fish, and they just whack its head off, and you go home with your fish. Or you pick your live chicken, and they butcher it right in front of you, and you take your chicken home and pluck the feathers yourself. So we're in this market, and one of the stalls includes, actually probably more than one, but the stall I gravitated toward featured all sorts of barrels of roasted insects, and they had these bug kebabs, sort of like a beef or chicken kebab, but it was just filled with big roasted grasshoppers and roasted silkworms. And I gotta tell you, the grasshoppers were as big as my thumb. They were huge. I had never seen anything like it, but to me, that was my new thing I was gonna try. I don't remember a lot about the taste. I remember the crunch like it was yesterday because it was a little to me like crunching on shrimp shells or peanut shells. I did it I came home to the States and I thought, well, did that. I'm done. That was my new thing. It was a novelty. But the longer I was back, the more I started thinking people are doing this. Why are they doing it? Where else are they doing it? What are they eating? What's going on here? And I started doing research that built into mountains of research into the nutrition, where it was being done, how long it's been being done, the sustainability issues that go along with it. And before long, I had this so much research that I put together a book proposal. So basically, I would say I was researching, if not full time, on the back burner for maybe 7, 8 years. Pitched it to a lot of agents who thought I was nuts, and I'm super happy that my agent Stacy Conla, who's on the webinar today, saw a little glimmer of something interesting in it, and she signed me over this proposal and has just been a true advocate for my work. And so I'm so grateful to her for helping get this book to Chicago Review Press and making it a reality. So that's sort of the how this came about. I wanted to read just a little bit of the first chapter of the book, and trust me, this isn't. I'm not going to put you to sleep reading here, but this is from the first chapter, which is called "When Grub is Really a Grub." The legs are the tricky part. Cricket legs tend to get stuck in your throat or under your tongue. And seriously, who wants to go through the day with a cricket limb wedged between their front teeth? Not cool. So pinch off the legs and start eating. Cricket's not your thing? Maybe you'll appreciate the nuttiness of roasted honeybee larvae. Black ants have a citrus taste if that's more to your liking. Or how about giant water bugs? They taste like sweet crab meat. This isn't a dare or some weird nature survival stunt. More than 2 billion people around the world regularly eat insects and arachnids. It's a practice called entomophagy, and it could be coming to a table near you. Now, entomophagy may sound new and crazy, but the truth is people have been doing it for centuries. Eating insects is mentioned several times in the Bible. John the Baptist famously lives on locusts and honey, and the book of Leviticus even lists the insects that are okay to eat. Ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle wrote about feasting on cicadas, noting that the females were tastiest because they were filled with juicy eggs. More than 2,000 years ago, Ethiopians were using salt to preserve bugs so they could eat them when fresh ones weren't available. And around the same time, the Nasamones, they're nomads from Libya, were gathering up wingless locusts to dry in the sun and then later pound into a fine powder. They mix the powder with milk or water and drink it. Sort of a long ago protein drink. The fact is that 1 out of every 4 people in the world regularly eats bugs, insects, or arachnids. They're nutritious and delicious, plus raising insects is more environmentally friendly than raising cattle or hogs. The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations says eating more insects could help fight world hunger. And to me, that was super important. Entomophagy is practiced in most parts of the world, including Africa, Asia, Australia, Mexico, and South America. Beetles, caterpillars, ants, wasps, bees, grasshoppers, and locusts are among the most devoured, but they're hardly the only ones being eaten. In fact, more than 2,100 species of insects are regularly consumed in about 113 different countries. So, why is it that in the United States, Canada, and Europe, most folks would rather squish a bug than eat it? Julie Lesnick, a professor at Wayne State University in Detroit, studies the way the human diet has changed over time. And she says that being grossed out by a bug buffet is a cultural thing. Here's what she said. If you don't eat insects, it's probably because your parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents didn't eat insects. In some societies, eating bugs was thought to be uncivilized. People associated insects with being dirty. Somewhere along the way, a little kid in your family probably picked up a beetle or caterpillar, and just as they were about to plop it in their mouth, somebody said, "Don't eat that, bugs are disgusting." And the words bugs and disgusting stuck in that child's mind. And when she grew up, she told her children and grandchildren the very same thing. Then they told their children and grandchildren. And so the cycle continued. Children in Thailand and Ghana and Mexico and a million other places grow up watching their friends and family eat bugs. And so they do the same with zero disgust factor. Professor Lesnick thinks that dining on dung beetles and gobbling grasshoppers will someday become commonplace in North America, but she says food trends take time to catch on. That's right, there are food trends, just like there are fashion trends and music trends. The foods we eat them and how we eat them change over time. So, to learn how we think, scientists think, people who study such things think that bugs might become more popular in Western culture, you'll have to read the rest of the book. So, that's just a little sampling of bugs for breakfast, which, by the way, I didn't mention is a middle grade nonfiction.
Yes, I didn't either. Sorry about that.
Middle grade is some people confuse that with middle school, and they're very different. Middle grade is generally third or fourth grade and up, but I've had a couple of friends who are adults who are very interested in entomophagy say it's a pretty good primer for adults too, who are sort of looking at learning about the topic.
I
So,
agree. I agree because I couldn't put it down. I read it all in one sitting. I didn't know I was interested in the topic. I mean, I knew that, I'm always interested in finding out more and I just couldn't put it down, Mary. So
thank you.
I think it's great for all ages. And I mean, let's talk a little bit about you cover so much in the book. It's deep history and current events and recipes and then fun facts. It all comes together so beautifully. And I wanted to have you tell us how you then went about picking the title Bugs for Breakfast. It's so fun and it works on all levels, but how did that come about?
Well, I'm glad you asked that because when I pitched this book to Stacy, my agent, and then we took it out to publishers, it had an entirely different title. It was called Ants for Dinner. So we've completely switched meals and insects. And it was after the book sold that I went to my editor at Chicago Review Press and said, this title's I know I came up with it, but it's kind of bothering me because, especially here in the United States, in North America, in Western cultures, ants aren't the biggest. They're not the number one insect that's being consumed. Here in the United States, I would say it's primarily crickets, followed by mealworms, because that's what we can raise here. So I asked, can we consider changing the title of the book? They were very open to it. We tossed around a million ideas. I really liked crunching on crickets. I like a little wordplay. But we were concerned that it sounded a little too juvenile, maybe picture bookish, and that I wanted middle grade kids and older to feel like they could read this without feeling like they were reading a baby book. So,
Oh,
so it became Bugs for Breakfast, and we're all pretty happy with it.
yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. And I love that, your earlier cute title too, but that makes sense and it really works with everything that you've got going on in the book and brings it all together so nicely.
Thank you.
So that's fun. It's always fun to hear how authors and their publishers come together and get that title. So you talked about the time that it took to get this book into the world. Were there any other specific challenges you faced when writing the book?
I would say the biggest challenges, especially when I started researching the book, were that, 8 years ago, this movement was virtually non existent in the United States and North America. So I was reading papers written out of the Netherlands and South Africa, and it felt like everything was happening on the other half of the planet. That cricket farming, insect farming, and products are pretty new here in our country, and it's still a really small scene. So that was challenge number one. I sort of had to wait for the timing to be right. And then challenge number two was COVID. I mean, like it's affected everything. There were a lot of small insect farms. A lot of the little cricket farms that are around are very, very small. And there are quite a few who did not survive COVID, which is a little sad. A lot of them survive sort of by doing school visits and things like that on the side, and those just ground to a halt. So that, and then I wanted to interview a lot of researchers, professors who all of a sudden were adjusting to putting their lives all online. You know, they're trying to teach their classes online. They didn't have time to talk to me. So COVID threw a wrench in the plans, and you know, as it did for all of us. So those were probably the biggest obstacles. But once I connected with people in the entomophagy world, I gotta say they're like the nicest people you could ever want to meet. They're just so enthusiastic. They're not going to tell you have to eat bugs, you know, 24/7. They just want you to be open to a new way of thinking about what we're eating and how, you know, the footprint that we are making on this planet. And I have enjoyed meeting all these folks. I saw Chef Yoon is on here. He has done such incredible work with creating recipes using insects and getting word out. And I saw too that we're joined by Shelby Smith, who is, in my mind, just like the biggest rock star cricket farmer you're ever going to meet. She is in Ames, Iowa. She has a company called Jimin Eats Crickets, and she just has been. Every time I have a question, I'm like, I promise, this is the last time I'm going to bother you, which she knows it's not true. And she's just been there to answer my questions. Let me see her. My questions in the beginning were so dumb because I just didn't understand. I grew up around farming cattle and hogs, and I've got to tell you, cricket farms are a whole new thing. So I hope that I've done an adequate job helping readers understand what a cricket farm looks like, so that they can start to imagine. And also, I give some instructions for if people want to try raising their own, they can do that and see what it's all about.
I know I'd like to think about that. I mean, I think you did a really great job of inspiring people, just as you said, as the entomophagists want to really think about this in a different way and not just go, ooh, bugs, I'm not going to eat them. That's disgusting. I mean, you put us right in the space of understanding how this can fit in. And so kudos to you for communicating that so
I will
well.
say, I just saw a comment from my friend Dana. We worked a long time ago together at the National 4-H Center, and she just said she married an entomologist. And I have to say, I was super nervous when I started out. I'm like, I don't want to talk to entomologists. They're going to be mad that we're eating the things that they want to study. And boy, it couldn't be further from the truth. They've been so generous with providing information um, about the craziest things. There's a chapter about greenhouse gas emissions from, I love cows, but let's just put it out there. They emit a lot of methane. And then talking to people in the entomology community about insects and are they releasing greenhouse gases? You'll have to read for sure in the book, but I can say not nearly as much as a cow. So it's been great all around.
Wonderful. Well, for all the fun facts that you've included in Bugs for Breakfast, tell us about one or two that were just eye-poppingly wows for you.
I think when I go talk to school kids, the biggest wow for them is the biggest wow for me. I always want to lead with that them. What it just kind of makes my jaw drop. And I always preface this by saying, I love a good hamburger, I love a good steak, but wow, it takes a lot of water to produce a pound of beef. And so when I talk to kids, I talk about it in terms of 4 quarter pounders. 1 pound of beef, and I think this will be startling even to adults, it takes 1,800 gallons of water. 1,800 gallons of water to produce 1 pound of beef. For chicken, it's like 500 gallons. Pork is a little bit more, like 570 something gallons of water to produce 1 pound. And crickets, it takes just 1 gallon of water to produce a pound of crickets. And they're right on par with the amount of protein that you're getting in those protein sources. So for me, it just feels like, I know for a lot of kids, kids are pretty tuned into their environment. They know that we're getting to a point where we really have to be concerned about reducing our water footprint. And that information is really eye-opening to them. It was super eye-opening to me. So that's probably one of my favorite things I've learned.
Okay. Well, I think maybe this is a good question for now about telling us more or telling us what kind of reception you've had from kids as you've been introducing this book in schools this last couple weeks or
Um,
so.
yeah, I got to do 6 school visits over the last week. Um, and every single one starts with ew, ooh, ick. And I like to think that by the end, their minds are opened a little bit. I talked to them a little bit about this is a saying Shelby uses is Shelby Smith from Jim and Eats. She uses don't yuck my yum. And kids love that saying. And we talk about what it means. I'm not gonna, if you want to eat a peanut butter and pickle sandwich, that's okay. I respect that. And we talk what it means about in different cultures. And I introduce, if you guys haven't Googled Museum of Disgusting Foods, you all should, because it's the most amazing thing. They have a great online presence and they showcase foods that are really loved in one country and but that people on the outside look at them and think they're disgusting. Haggis is a good example. Okay. And then I talked to them about what American foods, what foods from the United States do they think are featured in this museum? And people cannot guess. Kids love to guess. They all have a million guesses, but they don't guess. And I will tell you right here, I think you'd probably be startled to know too. Spam, which I always say, yeah, I'm going to go with an I don't know either way on that one. But root beer, Twinkies, and Pop Tarts. And when I tell kids Pop Tarts, they all just grab their chests. Like, this is the most startling news they could be told. But then I say, but think about those kids in Italy or, China or whatever, and they're looking at us eating Pop Tarts and they're like, ew, that's disgusting. Wait, maybe it wouldn't be if they tried it. What if we got them to try it? And it's the same thing with bugs. So then they start to open their minds. Oh, so we're asking them to try something. Maybe we should try what they have too. And I love being able to see that's sort of how I feel like I've left each school visit is that do I think they're all going to run home and eat insects? No, but I hope that their minds are open just a little bit. So plus I
That's
love a
exciting.
school visit. I like get all fired up.
I'm sure they love having you too. I mean, kids are just the best. They want to know. They get to meet a famous author like Mary Boone and see the cool book that she's just brought into the school and into the world. And it's all fun. And so tell me about taste testing those recipes in the book. You did that at home, right?
Yes. So a lot of the recipes were provided by people that I interviewed for the book. Shelby Smith has some recipes in here. Um, Charles Wilson from Cricket Flowers has some recipes in here. A couple other chefs. Kyle Fletcher. There's a huge bug fest in North Carolina every year. And Kyle Fletcher is a chef who won that competition, I think in 2019, and he was really generous with by sharing some recipes. But I also shared some of my recipes, and what I did for the most part was just take um, some of my favorite recipes and sub cricket powder for some of the flour in the recipes. You can't sub all of the flour because you need something to hold the dough together. Cricket powder doesn't have any gluten in it. It doesn't. So I was doing a lot of experimenting, making pizza crust, banana bread. I have made every kind of cookie you can imagine with using cricket powder and just trying to get the ratio just right. A lot of times people will say you can sub about a fourth of the flour in a recipe, um, replace that with cricket powder. And for a lot of recipes that works. For some, it's too much. For some, you could move it to a higher ratio. At first, my family was super apprehensive, and there was a lot of, heck no, I'm not going to eat that. But over time, and my husband likes to say he just assumes everything has cricket powder in it now. And I made some cookies yesterday, which I had to tell him, slap his fingers and say, you need to stop eating those. We need those for the taste test. Um, I I don't notice a difference, and I feel like, is a little cricket powder making my chocolate chip cookies health food? No, but it's making them a little healthier food, and it's reducing my water footprint just a little bit. So it's making the planet just a little bit happier and healthier, I think.
Hmm.
So
And does everything that you make have cricket powder in it?
no, it does not. I think that right now cricket powder it's a pretty expensive thing, and until we can get some bigger farms, I mean, anybody will tell you who works on one of these farms, it is a labor of love because there's nothing automated about cricket farming right now. And so they're working 7 days a week, 365 days a year to monitor temperatures, harvest everything. And they're, most of them are so small, they're doing their marketing. So it's not surprising that that the costs are high, and you can expect to pay for a pound of cricket protein $40, $45 up from there. So I've seen some as high as like $60 a pound for cricket powder.
Yeah.
So
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 now,
no, it's a little pricey right now to use in absolutely everything. But I would like to experiment with other proteins too. I think we've got to start thinking about how we can make this different and save our planet. So,
mhm. Well, now that you are a certified bug connoisseur,
yes,
I
there
believe
is a certification.
you've gotten your certificate. Um, what's your favorite? What's your least favorite?
Oh boy, that's hard. I think if I'm just eating whole roasted insects, and I'm going to say, probably not a popular thought for somebody who just wrote this book, whole roasted is not my favorite way to eat an insect. I do prefer the powder, and then I can just mix cricket powder into my smoothie or into whatever I'm making. But if I'm going to eat them whole and roasted, I like crickets. Crickets are called the gateway bug because they've got a pretty neutral flavor. They're a little bit nutty. And a lot of the ones that you find here available, they've been flavored. They're dill pickle, there's cocoa cinnamon, spicy, barbecue. So you can get them flavored. I think they're a little bit like a corn nut or a sunflower seed, maybe a combo of the two. I also really like roasted black ants. I think that like sprinkled over a soup or over a salad, they're kind of classy. So and a little bit of crunch and a little bit of lemon flavor. So those would be my favorites. Do I have a least favorite? Like the big beetles that are coming over that I've gotten from Asia, they're probably my least favorite because I don't really know what to do with them. You get them. I thought I had some here and I just don't. They're big. They're like bigger than a quarter, and they're hard. And I haven't really figured out a great way to serve these. So um, at this point, they are my least favorite, but I'm sure that over time I could figure out a better way to handle those.
Well, I love thinking about the powder versus the roasted, and my follow-up to that is just does the flavor disappear better as a powder?
Um, I
Does
think
it
that the
taste
powder
better?
still provides a real nutty taste in, let's say, cookies. And I like a nutty taste. So I'm okay with that. I don't think that there's a texture issue for me at all. It's like adding protein powder into a smoothie. If I'm going to put it in a smoothie, rather than go buy my whatever hemp based protein powder, I can get a cricket protein powder that I know has been made here in the United States, and I feel pretty good about it. So,
Well, I think now you're going to do some taste testing with some special
We
guests.
we have some special guests if they can make themselves seen through the magic of technology.
Yay.
Hi, Mary.
Yay! These are my friends, Katie and Ted and Jack. And they have agreed to do a little taste testing for us today. And you guys have some plates of cookies there, right?
We do. We have 2 plates of cookies.
Okay, and one plate says A and one plate says B. I would like you guys to take a bite of the A cookie first. And what we're going to do here, you guys, is see if they can tell which cookie has cricket powder in it. And after you take a bite, then you're going to take a bite of cookie B. This is a hard gig. It was hard to find somebody to eat cookies. These guys are brave volunteers. Okay.
Did you guys
Was A okay?
It was good? Okay.
Okay, let's try cookie B. The requirement for this job was you have to like cookies, you have to like chocolate chips. Ted, that's bite 2, yeah? Ted must like cookie B. Okay.
Are they different? I think
Technology help in the kitchen.
in them.
Tell me, you froze just a little bit for me. Jack, what do you think? Which cookie do you think has insects in it?
I think cookie A.
Cookie A might have insects in it. What do you think, Ted?
Do you have a guess, Ted?
I think cookie A sort of has insects in it too.
And why do you think that, you guys?
Because they were chewier.
Oh. Did you like them?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm going to say these guys are absolutely right. Cookie A has cricket powder in it. The recipe calls for 1.5 cups of flour, and I replaced about 1/3 of a cup of that with cricket powder. But they both, since you guys thought those were both delicious, would you mind trying some whole roasted crickets? You have some right there?
Yeah, pick one out.
So I haven't even gotten to try these yet. These are cocoa cinnamon crickets from Jim and Eats Crickets. Thank you, Shelby. And give them a try. Can you see them there? Yep, there's the cricket.
They taste a little bit like pumpkin pie.
Pumpkin pie. Ooh. The taste of fall.
I noticed you talking about cricket legs earlier. The legs on these ones are non-existent.
Yeah, they've sort of been shaken off. What did you think, Ted?
I think they were good.
Were they? Would you guys eat them again?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I very much appreciate you being taste testers for me today. And maybe I'll have some extra crickets for you guys to eat in your school lunches this week.
Do you think if you didn't know it had cricket flour in it, would you notice something different about the cookie, or does it just taste like a chocolate chip cookie?
It's chewier, yeah.
It's chewier.
And it is a little thicker.
How about you, Ted? Did it have a different flavor than you're used to, or was it mostly the same flavor?
Had a little different flavors than I'm used to.
All right.
But it tasted like a fantastic chocolate chip cookie.
I am so glad. Thank you guys for doing that. And if you guys have questions, you know you can pop them in the Q&A too, okay? All right. Thank you. And now through the wonders of technology, Lisa is back.
Well, how fun! How fun. I felt like I was right there.
Tasting some cookies. I'll get some cookies to you, Lisa.
Some cookies. Well, we have a very busy Q&A.
Good.
And So, shall we just start giving you those questions? There are
Let's
lots of
dive
here.
in.
Joseph says, "Hi, Mary. How often do you eat insects nowadays? And what are some of the favorite ways to prepare them?"
Oh, Joseph, well, I haven't been home lately, but when I'm home, I do like to, I probably use them at this point 2 to 3 times a week. And I'm most often using them in baked goods or actually, actually, that might be a lie because life's been a little hectic. I think the smoothie, I love a good like, peanut butter banana smoothie in the morning and tossing a little bit cricket powder in there is one of my favorite things to do. So 2 to 3 times a week at this point. I'm not quite as
Here,
creative. Chef Boone is a real bug chef, and he comes. I'm just amazed. If any of you are on Instagram, he's Brooklyn Bugs on Instagram, and he posts the most amazing stuff. Did a lot of great work with cicadas this summer, so just coming up with some amazing recipes. So follow him if you're on Instagram.
here's one about the book from Christine. Is there an arthropod glossary in it?
There is not, but perhaps we need a supplement. I have tried to put some extra information on my website, which is www.boonerights.com. So there is a little bit of the extras, the behind the scenes, and that would be a great thing for me to add to the website. So thanks for that idea.
And Nat would like to know, has researching and writing this book changed the way that you eat day to day?
I would say it's, and I grew up on a farm in Iowa, but it's probably made us a little less dependent on traditional protein sources. And it's probably, I think it's really had an effect on making me more environmentally aware, whether it's how long my shower is or how I'm getting my protein, I'm a little more aware of how much water I'm using and that we got to maybe, cut that back just a little bit if we want this planet to go on in a healthy way. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
and it's created, obviously it's opened my mind because that first tasting in Vietnam I thought was a once in a lifetime thing and I was never going to eat bugs again. Um, so
And here you are.
and here I am. And I always like to say to school kids, and you're eating bugs all the time. And I talk to them about how the federal government regulates how many bug parts can be in various foods. Peanut butter is one of my very favorite things in the world, but gosh, peanuts grow underground. So they have bugs in them sometimes. And as hard as people try to get them out when they're processing them, there's going to be bug eggs or a leg or a wing that gets in there. And that's why there are limits established by the federal government for foods like broccoli or cinnamon or allspice or um, chocolate or chocolate. So yeah, I'm aware of all that now.
That fact from your book really is I think the one thing that made me start thinking, well, I should just try some because obviously I'm eating them now. So,
That's what I always tell kids when I start telling them that. They're like, ew. And I said, but you're all here and you're all okay. And you've been doing this for your entire lives. Are you really going to give up all these foods? No. So
Stuart would like to know, are there any edible bugs that you had a serious initial aversion to and then you overcame it?
I was not a big mealworm fan in the beginning. Mealworms I thought were a little bit chalky. And I think that had to do with the first ones that I got had been packaged and shipped from, I think they were shipped from Asia. But once I got a hold of some better, fresher mealworms and figured out a lot of it has to do with preparation, how you're preparing them. If you toss them in a stir fry or put them in a granola mix, I figured out just better ways to eat them. So I think mealworms were the one that kind of made me ugh at the beginning.
Diane, kind of this goes with what you just said about cooking with them. Do you cook with bugs a lot, and do you reveal the contents when you do?
I do. I both yes to both of those. I use them quite a bit, a couple times a week. If I'm cooking for a group, I always do because there is some concern that if you're allergic to shellfish, you may also be allergic to insects because they have that same sort of exoskeleton. So I would never just sneak them into something. I want to make sure that people are aware of what they're eating. Um, and then I hope that they'll try them. And I found that cookies, I mean, like I said, they're not health food, but sometimes it's that baby step to get them to the next thing. Um, the same, there's a chip I really like called Chirps Chips. And are they health food? No, but they're chips. And if people like chips, why not try a chip that's got some cricket protein in it? It's not just all carbs. And it's those baby steps that I think are going to start opening our minds. So,
Leslie says food definitely is cultural. Is entomophagy popping up in certain areas in the US?
um, I would say the coasts are the first places it feels like that. I don't know. I don't know that there's a regional answer to that. Um, I think it's wherever there's somebody doing education. I think out on the East Coast, I think of there being a big movement because Joseph is out there doing his thing with Brooklyn Bugs. Down around North Carolina, Bug Fest draws tens of thousands of people to Raleigh every year for Bug Fest. So there's wherever there's somebody doing something big to raise awareness. Again, like Shelby Smith is hitting, I swear to God, every market in the Midwest every single weekend. I don't know how she does it, but it's raising awareness. So hopefully the book will maybe help speed that awareness process up because we can't have one person in every town spreading the gospel. It's got to be a bigger effort.
Donna wants to know about nutritional value to eating bugs.
Well, they're pretty packed with protein, and the book goes through all of the nutritional benefits. I think the big ones for me that stick with me are they're high in iron, they're high in fiber, they're really high in protein. Right on the level with beef, pound for pound. They are given that punch, and vitamin B12. So B12 helps convert. Food into energy, and it's something you can't store. So that's a really important vitamin. So those are probably
Mm.
the highlights for you in terms of bug nutrition. And it varies slightly, bug to bug, and even within like crickets, let's say within crickets raised here in the US fed one thing might have a slightly different nutritional impact than or profile than bugs raised somewhere else. So you got to check the labels, but yeah.
This is sort of related from Lisa, who says, in your research, where would bugs be placed on the food pyramid?
Oh boy, that's a good question. I would probably place them with, meat and because it's your protein source. Meat and beans are beans in the same category with meat because they're a protein source. The food pyramid has changed since I was a kid. Um, but I think that's where I would put them. I'm not sure they've gotten to, I haven't seen a little illustration that places them there, though. Maybe that's what we need to work on next.
JP wants to know, do grocery stores carry insect foods? Do you know of any?
Some I do. I think JP is in Iowa, if I am correct. And I know that Jim and Eats is in a bunch of high V's in the Midwest. Pioneer Food Co-op there, nationwide. A lot of times if you go to a health food store, I've seen them at World Market, and that's an occasional thing. But I've also seen them at the health food stores, the co-ops here. So,
Okay. Joseph would like to know, do you have any larger scaled goals or interests with involvement in entomophagy outside of being an author?
ooh, good question. I don't know. I'm not a chef and I'm not a farmer, so I feel like my best, the best thing I can do is maybe use my voice as an author. Um, so I've been doing a lot of speaking to, and especially dealing with kids, because I feel like if you've reached the age of 40 and you're not eating insects, the chances that you're going to start are probably a little bit minimal. But if you start eating them as a kid and you just grow up that way, it might become a bigger part of your lifestyle. So I think that's a good question, Joseph. I don't know that I have the answer to it. I have thought about maybe doing another book, but aimed at younger kids. So we'll see. Because, like I said, this one's for about third grade and up. So maybe something that's more picture bookish. So.
Annette would like to know, did this book require a different kind of research than other books? It sounds like you got to do lots of interviews for it.
So many interviews. I would say not different types, but just it required so much different research. I don't think I've done books before where I had to do recipe testing. I love hands-on research, and this book required quite a lot of that. Not only going to visit the farms, but visiting processing plants and plants. And by plants, I mean usually it's one room because these operations are so small. But seeing how the cricket bars are being made and how the crickets are being harvested. And so it required some hands-on research. Just, I think I don't know if this touches on Annette's question or it addresses something else. One of the hardest things for me was when you start talking about the effect this has on the environment, and let's talk about methane being pumped into the atmosphere by cows, then you have to start talking about greenhouse gases, and then you have to start talking about global warming. And why is it bad that the temperature is going up 1 degree every so many years? Because that sounds great in the middle of the summer, right? Wouldn't it be nice to have a nice warm day? Well, not really when it's melting icebergs. And taking these really complex topics and making them understandable and relatable to young readers. So that was probably the most challenging part of all of that, was gathering this very academic, a lot of it is really academic research, and making it comprehensible and relatable.
Mm-hmm. Melissa says, we like to eat tortilla chips made from crickets. And have you tried bug snack foods?
Yes, I'll bet she's talking about the Chirps chips. Chirps is a company that actually sort of became famous because they got funding on Shark Tank, and they have a line of chips that are made with cricket protein. And those guys were a great resource for this book as well. Yes, well, I love junk food, so why not add a little cricket protein? Make it a tiny bit less junk and more protein. So yeah, I love a good chip.
And Paula asks, are there any bugs that are inedible?
There are. Great question. I always leave every school presentation saying, now, are you just going to go start eating bugs out of your yard? And some of them go, yeah. And I say, no, you're not. My rule of thumb is you need to know how a bug was raised and how a bug died, because I don't want people eating bugs that have been sprayed with something. Beyond that, there are bugs that you don't want to eat that could irritate your stomach, that could contain something you'd have a bad reaction to. And a whole lot of that is there are so many insects and bugs out there that just haven't been tested yet. Mm. So there are people eating 2,100 species of insects at this point, and that leaves tens of thousands of species that, for the most part, probably haven't even been tested. So 2,100 is a pretty good variety to stick with for right now. So stick to those.
Pretty good choice.
And let them get to the others. Or I always tell kids, this is a great possible career for you, is you can start investigating what other bugs might be edible, or you could start thinking, how can we make cows less gassy? Or I like to think that maybe it gets them thinking in terms of innovation and how they could be part of the solution down the road.
We have one from Janet, and who says, "What additional promos can be done on the East Coast, especially in New Jersey?"
Gee, well, I'm doing in-person school visits where I am traveling, to schools that either are paying for me to travel there or that I'm already going there. But I'm also doing a lot of school virtual visits. And so we can totally arrange that. And I just worked out a way that we can, if somebody wants to do a virtual school visit, no matter, we got really good at that, for the last 2 years. That I can, if we know 2 weeks ahead of time, I can ship out little insect samples so they can do a tasting there. And it's almost like I'm there, but not quite. That's probably at this point the best I can do. I can't be everywhere. I've been going to a lot of library conferences, and that's going to continue. So I hope that the librarians will give me a little bug love and get the book into their libraries.
So I'm going to go into pull out some of the questions that are in the chat. We've got a few, and I think maybe this was answered, but Shelby's asking, what was one of the most common questions you heard from kids on the school tour? I think, well, you talked
Yeah,
about reaction, but
their number one question is, can you eat this? Can you eat that? Can you eat wolf spiders? Can you eat ladybugs? And I always remind them, there are a lot of bugs out there, and I am not an encyclopedia, so I know some general bugs you can eat, but I am not aware if you can eat a wolf spider. I'm not even sure I would know a wolf spider if I met it. So don't eat anything you don't know. That's probably the number one thing. And then they all want to know what's my favorite bug. So,
mhm.
and I tell them crickets from Jim and Eats Crickets.
And Dana would like to know, other than cricket powders, are there other powders popular in the USA?
Not yet. I have seen where you can order mealworm powder, but I don't know that it was from a U.S. source. I mean, it's this whole field they're just babies, and a lot of these farms, by the way, are so small that they're producing just a couple of products. Most of them are doing bars and powders. A couple are doing cookies. But they're one or two people. So in the book, I theorized that it's going to take somebody like a Nestle or a Heinz to come in and start making Kraft macaroni and cheese or something before it becomes a big thing. So right now, I just don't think there's the resources for it. So invest your money, people.
Marianne wants to know if people sell grasshoppers too.
I know that you can find them in some, especially in Mexican markets. They're not regulated here. They're not one of the insects that people are growing here. So you're more likely to find them in other countries or online from out of the country resources. There is a pretty big grasshopper farm out of Israel. So, but I'm not aware of any U.S. grasshopper farms.
Eve would like to know, how long do you think it will take for people in the US to start eating bugs regularly?
That's a good question, Eve. Eve, who is my daughter, who is a very picky eater, I would say for Eve, it might take a very long time. I think I think a lot of people are really open to doing what it takes for the environment. So I'm kind of hopeful that within the next 5 years, you can find cricket protein and roasted crickets on the shelves of pretty much any grocery store you go to. So
Annie has a question specifically about the writing, and that's, what was the most challenging thing about just the writing?
Organizing, organizing, because I had years and piles of printouts and books that were, if I piled it all up, it would have been over 5 feet tall, I'm sure. And then when it conflicted with each other or it was outdated, trying to get it all organized and to make sense and make it make sense at a kid level that wasn't belittling, but actually written so that they could relate to it and not talk down to them. That's probably the biggest challenge.
Well, I think that hits all the questions we've had right now. And
Those were some great questions. Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody, for those.
great. Oh, okay. One more just popped up. I think we can get it. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Leslie says, what did you do when you had conflicting info? Always a good question.
Well, I would go to the newest, usually the newest research was more telling. So I would start there and make sure that it's, is this something that we've discovered, and were you aware of the previous research? And yes, they were, and now we've disproven that. So a lot of times, these researchers, they've devoted their lives to studying cricket gas. So can I just call them up? Weirdly, yeah, they want to talk to other people about cricket gas. And so I made a lot of phone calls and talked to them and said, well, I read this previous report that reported this. And they were great about helping me maneuver my way through which facts were the facts I should go with. Great question, Leslie.
Yeah. Should we do the giveaways?
Let's do it. We did a lot of great questions. We have 3 giveaways, right?
Everybody. Yeah. So, and so Mary's going to tell us what the prizes are, and I will do an internet randomizer to pick from the questioners.
Okay. So I have a copy of Bugs for Breakfast that I want to send out to somebody. And even if you already have one, awesome. Give it to your favorite school, your favorite teacher, your next door neighbor. Let's spread the love. So who are we going to give that one to, Lisa?
Melissa.
Melissa. I know Melissa. Awesome. And then the next prize, I have they're very cute, little bug zipper pouch. It's a little minier than a pencil pouch, and a cricket protein bar from Jim and Eats Crickets.
Ooh, that sounds great. Annette.
Oh, awesome. Annette is a fellow author. I am super happy that she was able to join us. Awesome. And the last prize is a bug tote bag. A copy of Bugs for Breakfast and a cricket protein bar goes to
Leslie.
Leslie. Awesome.
And I assume you have everyone's contact.
I believe all 3 of those folks registered ahead of time, so yeah. I will be able to reach out to them and make sure that they get those prizes. So as we wrap up here, I really, first of all, thank you, Lisa, for keeping us on task and moving forward and handling all of the things that I was not sure I could handle on my own. So I appreciate that. And my husband, who's been running around pushing buttons and making sure it all happened. I want to thank Katie and Ted and Jack for being taste testers. I want to thank all of you because you had a million other things you could have been doing on a Sunday afternoon. So thank you for being here. If you would like to help me, I really could use one. If you've already bought the book, thank you. If you haven't, I would love for you to buy the book. But I also could use reviews. So if you like the book, and I hope that you do, go to Amazon, go to Goodreads and review the book because you have no idea how those reviews play into whether people buy the book. So thank you. By the way, if any of you are in the Tacoma area, and I think a few of you may be, we're doing an in-person launch on Tuesday evening at Stock List Goods on Pacific Ave in Tacoma. And we'll have lots of items to taste and we'll just continue the celebration. But for those of you who join me from across the country and Canada, thank you so much for being here.
Well, congratulations, Mary. I know I'm excited for you to have this book in the world, and everyone here is so proud of you. And everybody buy the book, give it as gifts, request it from the at your library so they put it in stock. Get on that. And
Awesome.
thanks everybody for coming. What a great group.
Thank you, guys.